Lesbians and gay men in Lebanon are up against stiff odds, a war-torn country with competing radical religious sects. Homosexuality is illegal and the penalties can be tough, but the LGBT community is making progress nonetheless. In fact, the first book of LGBT stories has just been published. An interview with one of the contributors is coming up. You think the struggle for equality is tough in this country? Well, try organizing for sexual freedom in a part of the world dominated not by one set of religious extremists, but many. In Iraq, the bodies of 6 men who were believed to be gay were found dead inside a city this spring after a Shiite cleric repeatedly condemned homosexuality during Friday prayers. In 2001, Egyptian police arrested 52 men at a gay hangout. In 2005, 35 men were arrested in Saudi Arabia for suspected homosexuality. What's the story in Lebanon? Supposedly cosmopolitan Lebanon still observes something they call Article 534, which prohibits sexual conduct that, quote, contradicts the laws of nature. Yet people have still figured out how to organize for their rights, and maybe they've got a thing or two to teach us. Nadine Mawad is one of those people, the founder of Lebanon's feminist collective. She works closely with MEME, an underground support community for lesbians. Barid Mistaijil, or Male in a Hurry, the book whose manuscript you just saw being passed along like a CIA dossier in that video, is just out, produced in part by the folks at MEME. Thank you so much for coming in the program, Nadine. This is very exciting.
Thank you for having me.
We do sometimes get a little relaxed about what fighting for LGBT equality looks like. For those who have never been organizers in a part of the world where the obstacles are as tough as they are in Lebanon, tell us what it's like. Is it really that sort of surreptitious world that you send up a little bit in your video?
Well, it is very much like that. I mean, you have to bear in mind that you can't just talk about one specific country from the perspective of just religion. You have to bring in class, a level of education, different genders. So for the men, it's a totally different ballgame than for the women. For the trans folk, it's especially extremely hard. But Lebanon in particular is like especially characterized by so many different religions, and it's supposed to be a place where we can all live together. But beneath the surface, it's waiting to like explode at any moment. So it becomes very hard for LGBTs to self-identify or to organize or to do things publicly. It's only in very privileged circles where you can come out and say, I am gay, or I am a lesbian, or I am bisexual.
Now, you actually produced a video, or a video was produced that looks at some of that religious, let's just say, diversity. I mean, let's take a look. It's pretty daunting what you're up against.
أنا مارونية، أنا درزية، أنا ملحدة، أنا أرمن كاثوليك، أنا شيعية، أنا سريان كاثوليك، أنا إنجيلية، أنا ما بعرف، أنا أرثوذكس، أنا سنية، أنا كاثوليك، أنا مسلمة، أنا مثلية. هيدي هوية مش خطية.
Now, that was produced by the folks at MEME. There's a website there linking to them. I mean, there might be people who look at that and say, Lebanon's got so many troubles. History of civil war, peace, surely is more of a priority than figuring out LGBT equality.
Well, that's been something that's been said around the world, and lots of the human rights discourse were always put down for talking about things like sexual rights, gay rights in particular. And actually, one of the stories in this book that's entitled Gay Rights Are Human Rights talks about exactly that. This woman is saying that during war, my mother takes care of me, she loves me, we become protective of each other. But if I ever came out to her, told her I was a lesbian, she would kick me out, she would abandon me, she would abuse me. So it's, for LGBT folk, it's at the top of their priorities. So we just can't go on saying that just because there's conflict or just because we're economically having trouble that we can't talk about the rights of queer people as well.
Talk about how the relationships are, or how do you see the connection between the kind of human equality that you're talking about and peace in a place like Lebanon?
Well, for peace to come out, it has to come out for all of its people, right? I mean, peace is just not a word that we throw around. It's not just the absence of war. Peace is a state where we live together, where everybody's respected, where human dignity for everybody is on the top of everybody's priority, where it's protected, where you feel safe, where you can walk around and own a part of this country that you're part of. So for that process to happen, it can't happen without women's rights. It can't happen without sexual rights. It can't happen if we just had Lebanese elections lately, and the number of women in parliament actually dropped from 6 to 4. We are now country number 137, I think, out of 140 or something.
Well, we're not doing so great either here, so...
Yeah, but for the liberal country of the Middle East, as we're portrayed to be, mainly because we're a tourist industry, in a lot of ways we are so backwards in terms of women's rights. And you look at the arena of all the politicians, it's all the men who are going to war over and over again, and there's just no space for other genders or other sexual identities.
Well, that's another intersection, isn't it? Lesbian rights, queer women's rights, and women's rights, per se. How do they connect in your view? And is lesbian equality necessarily a feminist issue?
Absolutely. I mean, because in Lebanon, a woman is not seen as a sexual being. So issues of virginity are very strong. Issues of, we haven't even started the debate on abortion in Lebanon. It's still illegal. Nobody has touched it. Nobody's touched sexual harassment. Nobody's worked on rape issues. Nobody's worked on sexual health services or education that's progressive. And when you look at all of these issues, the lesbian identity is just part of this female identity that's being oppressed and silenced. And also another one of the reasons why it was so important to publish this book is to bring these stories out into the open. And some of the stories deal with things like virginity, like wetness, like the first sexual encounter, self-esteem and body image. And it was important for us to put them out there and say, this is what all of us deal with. Also to find feminist allies in our movement.